Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I am delighted to have you join Cicero's Empowerment webinar series. Today, we're going to be discussing how to truly leverage the power of one. My name is Blake Floyd, and I'm the marketing and brand manager here at Cicero. And throughout this webinar, if you guys have any questions or comments or anything to add, please use that chat feature, or you can email those questions or comments to marketing@cicero.com. Currently, Workday is serving over 8,000 customers globally, and they work with around 35 different implementation partners. It's just such a wide footprint that's spread. And I am so excited to invite two of my, well, one's a colleague, one's a previous colleague, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves here shortly. So I would like to welcome Kelsey Bradbury and Jet Canada.
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Doing good.
Good. Well, Kelsey, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your role here with Cicero, your background, and all that good stuff.
Sure thing. So I've spent the last 5 years actually on the client side. I just recently became a consultant with Cicero and loving every minute of it. But a lot of my experiences do come from that client side, being a interim payroll manager, being that HR administrator. So I know I've been in the shoes of many of the HR team members. I've learned the processes, been in the weeds with them. So that's a lot of where I come from with my background and having full functional support in the entire HCM suite, from recruiting all the way through to payroll and everything in between. So trying to connect all the different areas and how things impact downstream, coming from my payroll background that I had even before working in Workday. Payroll is always the end result. People need to be paid. And so Absolutely. I've gotten very familiar with, that's where I come from, is there's a lot of connections that we can embrace.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Jet, what about you?
So I've been in the Workday ecosystem for about 10 years now. And I've primarily been working on the client side, but I did a little bit of dabbling in consulting. On the client side, though, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. So having worked in so many different modules and having experienced the power of one and downstream impacts in so many different ways, I'm really glad to be here to talk about it with everybody and hopefully share some knowledge and some things that our audience doesn't know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Like I said, I'm so glad to have you guys here. Let's go through the agenda really quickly here. So we're going to be going over the pre-implementation planning, the downstream modular impact, like you had mentioned, Jet. We're going to talk about how customers can truly leverage that power of one. We're going to go over some best practices to start off with, take a look at some case study situations, and then we'll hop into a Q&A. So then why don't we kick off here with, what is the power of one? What does that mean when we hear that all over social media, meetings, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, so the slide here that we're showing, we've all seen these images. They are on every single sales and demo call and webinar from Workday. So they're ingrained into our brain. They keep talking about the power of one. But what I've realized, with the power of one, meaning one system, one source of data, that one security system and one user experience. Everybody is in the same system. It's not just an HR data warehouse. And so many times when I'm working with either my coworkers or now from a consultative perspective, working with those clients, we're working through requirements and design. So many people, I actually ask the question saying, okay, hold on a second, let's rethink this, because are we taking advantage of what the power of one really means? Do you understand all these different connections that data from a recruiter, onboarding an employee, things like that can flow all the way through, have so many different impacts? Are we taking advantage of this, or are we only thinking in our singular silos that each of the functions work in day to day? So that's where a lot of that power of one comes from, is really pushing back and confirming as we're building out those requirements. Are we doing it? Are we actually doing what all of us bought into during those sales and demos.
Exactly. Many companies have business units that will operate in silos and don't coordinate with other departments, and this can just lead to disastrous results. So we're going to guide you through some ways to best utilize the power of one within Workday and try and avoid some of those pitfalls as a team.
Awesome. So, and that, of course, all starts pre-implementation, like we discussed. So, what are those pitfalls where a lot of companies see themselves having trouble before implementation?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that one first. Is mapping out and defining what your company's business processes are in advance of the implementation is something that's commonly missed. You go into those design sessions early on during the project and it's like, wait, what is the actual process? You didn't realize all the different connections that people were already using. Your coworkers, downstream finance, things like that, were already using some of that data. So it's mapping out those processes that can actually begin before you even sign the contracts with Workday or with your HRIS. So that's where I found that a lot of companies actually lack the time. And then some of them, in fact, lack the discipline to do those mappings, to get all the inner workings of, oh, yep, this work stream goes this way. This one, well, if it's this case, it goes here. So in those instances, I would suggest bringing in an external partner to assist with that task, because you're not only adding this additional resource at a crucial part of your project, that pre-implementation stage, setting you up for success during your project, but you're bringing in a fresh perspective that can enhance your project's growth and advancement early on. You're starting off on that right foot. So having your process defined prior to the implementation does allow you that time to meet with other partners within your organization to gain their feedback on these processes. So when it comes down to those design decisions, you are actually empowered as an individual, as a department, with the knowledge of what enhancements your organization wants. And then you can make efficient and effective decisions right then and there versus having to constantly circle back and reconfirm with people during a very crucial part of the implementation. Another item would be the data cleanup. You already have access to your data. It's in your legacy system that you're using right now. So before contracts are even signed, this is yet again another step that cleaning up your data, understanding your data and all the different inner workings, exceptions, things like that, helps actually guide you and prepare you for what you need to do for your processes, how you need to design them, what information you need, and how to build that into your new system. And so that is something that can be started also pre-implementation while you're sitting in all those sales calls. Start thinking through your data and getting it clean, because so many times you're left scrambling. People don't think of the data until it's ready to, hey, we need to export it out of your legacy system and put it in your new system. They don't think about it till then. And now you're scrambling, trying to clean up data, trying to figure it out. Oh, it now doesn't fit into what I just built. So then that could actually cause potential additional expenses that you hadn't planned for your project just to get it done on time, or it might actually push out your project timeline. So therefore, starting off on getting that data cleaned up early on is another crucial piece that does get missed.
Okay. And I have a quick question. So when you say like mapping out and defining those business processes, when you say business process, what does that mean?
Yeah. So recruitment, as an example, what is the workflow from the time an employee applies? What's the next step? How do you treat that candidate? Then is it the interview? Is it, oh, we need to do a phone screen. Let's pull this person in. Let's do a panel interview, as a round 3, mapping that out. Those are the processes. Something as simple as a termination. Who needs to be notified? What data needs to be verified in order for payroll to cut that final check? Are there state regulations that need to be done and followed so that final payment is done compliantly with that state? So therefore, you're not running into any issues there. So it's mapping out anything. How does data get in the system? How is it used? Where does it get used?
Okay, cool. Thank you. Jet, what about you? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely when you're implementing, now's the time. If you don't have very well organized data, now's the time to organize it. It's so much easier to get your data organized and to implement naming conventions during the implementation process than 2 or 3 years down the line when you have hundreds of reports, thousands of calculated fields, and just no organization. If there's something you don't like about your data, now's the time to fix it. I know a small place to start is locations. At a former employer, their locations were essentially sort of the city name that the location might be near, and that's it. And it was a global company. So, when I got in there, I said, I'm changing this. If I accomplish one thing here, I'm changing this. And so, we had a naming convention of country, state, city, and then location name, if there was a special name for that location. So, and that just made everything so much easier. It made searching for locations easier. It made posting jobs easier. So those little changes, those little things that you're just working on, and they just kind of annoy you a little bit, and you're just like, oh, I wish this was better. Now's your time to make it better. Make it better for yourself, for others, make the world a better place. So I know data organization and naming convention sounds really boring, but it's a nice and honestly simple way of just making things more organized, making things easier to find, and kind of leading into what I said before. Whether you have a national company or a global company, try and think about the future. If your national company may be going global, even with just one other location, then start trying to think globally in your naming conventions, in your organization, in your report tags. Also, tagging your reports, and giving them good naming conventions, that can help you out later down the line when someone comes up to you and says, hey, I want a report catalog in Workday. You aren't going to go, oh no, you're going to go, yes, my time to shine has come. So, like I said, it's a nice, easy way to set up some structure around your data, because, setting up structure just makes everything much, much smoother, much, much easier. And it kind of allows you and others in the room to think about other ways you can organize data. You may come up with one aspect that you've been struggling with, and someone else comes up with a completely different perspective, a completely different aspect that they say, oh, hey, let's organize this, let's change that. So, definitely get those ideas out there and work through that. Make life easier on everybody. The other thing is security. You got to have a security philosophy. I've seen a lot of companies debate on security well after implementation. And, it's like your HR personnel should be pretty used to dealing with and handling, confidential data. But if your philosophy does exclude them from seeing certain data, make sure you have a way to explain that to them. Make sure you have a way for them to get the data they need to do their jobs if they can't go in and access it themselves. Because, when you restrict data like that, you're giving someone else a job now. Their job is now to provide HR with that data. So keep that in mind. Try and figure out if you're going to have a policy around what you do when someone comes up to you and says, I need X, Y, and Z data. Are you going to make a new security group? Are you going to run them a report? Build yourself out a nice philosophy and a flow chart so that you can keep consistent. Because otherwise, again, you'll run into like hundreds and thousands of security groups. And guess what? You have to maintain those. You have to test them biannually. You have to make sure the right people are in the right ones. It can become a lot of work. So definitely having a security philosophy and having everyone from the top all the way down understand that will help you so very much. Also, check with IT. check with your IT team to see if they have a data security policy and what their outline is for what is considered public data, internal data, and confidential data. And then you can use that to go, and help explain this to your peers in HR, to others in the company. So, the power of teamwork, it can really help you out with your security setup and processes moving forward. And then the last note I wanted to touch on is that turnover happens. People leave companies. That's going to happen. And change is just often a huge catalyst for turnover. For every person who's really excited to learn Workday, there may be someone else who's a little less excited. Sometimes there's also a shift in work where someone already has a full plate of responsibilities and now they have the administration of Workday. So before someone quits, make sure you're checking in on your team. Try and keep an open dialogue with how much work everyone has, how full their plate is. Talk to them about how their work will change during and after implementation. Listen to them. Talk about what their work and career would look like after go live. Some people don't understand what a big opportunity learning Workday is. And so helping to guide them through that and show them, all of the fantastic and awesome things they can learn can be a big motivator. Create a culture of sharing and, sharing of knowledge of current and future processes. So you'd never know what's being completed every single day by that one person over there in the corner, really quiet, they keep to themselves. Suddenly they're gone, and now your benefits vendors haven't been paid for like 90 days, and they come yelling at you on the phone. You definitely want to try as much as possible to find out all of these processes, automate as many as you can through Workday, but then also, share the information on that work with your team.
Yeah.
The other thing to just note is that, when someone does quit, companies like Cicero can come in and engage in knowledge transfer right away while you're looking for a replacement. So Absolutely. I'll let Blake speak to that if he has any comments.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that we definitely do provide for our clients, specifically for turnover, because when we're working on whether it's time and materials projects or it's a part of our managed services, we do create those resolution documentation guides, and you basically build this lovely tenant-specific solution documentation packet or Bible, if you will. So when somebody new comes in, it's just like, hey, here's a screenshot of what it looks like, and it makes that turnover and knowledge transfer process of bringing in somebody a lot easier because they already have those tenant specific solutions.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's, because we're getting almost to time here. So if y'all are okay with it, let's go ahead and move on to talking about the downstream modular impact. And I will let Kelsey, if you want to kick off, or Jet.
I'll kick off.
Perfect. Go for it.
As you can see, it really is all connected. My huge point of advice here is develop a list of contacts, business and data owners in your organization that center around these modules that you see. The comp team, benefits team, performance team, and so on. Make sure you have this list available to the implementation and HRIS team so that they can reach out as projects intersect with these other modules. It's also been my opinion that it's better to over-inform than to leave someone out. Let others decide when to exclude themselves from a process. If you think that they should be involved, go ahead and include them. Send them communication. On that note, though, make sure your communications are easy to read and impactful. If you keep sending the payroll lady a 5-page email every day, she doesn't have time for that. So make sure you're calling out like, hey, payroll, we think this is going to impact you here, here, and here. What are your thoughts? So yeah, just try and make sure that you're calling out actions, potential information, things that will have downstream impacts, and include folks that are going to be involved in that.
And then, my sense on it is, I agree. This image, I like it because it has a lot going on, but it does show all the different connections. It can go every which direction. So for me, one of the biggest things is, yes, that communication and understanding not only your own functional space, but probably the biggest piece is also understanding how your data is getting to you. If you're staying in compensation, well, how are people being assigned your plans? Understanding not only that, you don't have to configure it. You don't have to be the person that's going to plug in the rules, but you need to understand your policies. You need to understand where those things are coming from. So recruiting, one-time payments, things like that are being promised during the offer is what I was trying to think of. During that offer stage, and it should be auto-assigned during the hire and coming straight through. You shouldn't have to touch that, but let's make sure and audit it. Therefore, as you're building those connections, making sure that you're putting in those checks and balances and controlling all of those different places from a high level perspective. You don't have to be in the weeds, clicking that approve button or the submit button on every single task. Understanding these connections, where the data is coming from, and how to fix it. If something breaks in your area, you need to know who to go to. You need to understand where that is coming from so that you can say, hey, recruitment, did you change something about your offer process? Because all of a sudden, people aren't being assigned the auto allowance or whatever that plan may be. So understanding where your data is coming from and then where is it going? Also, if you fix something, that ties back in with what Jet was talking about with communications. You need to understand where your changes, where your information is going in the system. And you might not realize that an executive dashboard, an executive is looking at a report that has some of that information. But if you all of a sudden change how that information is being presented, you could break that dashboard that they're looking at to stay high level and stay current with their teams. So understanding not only your area, but how the data comes to you and how your data goes downstream into other places and even outside of Workday. Keep that in mind. Is your finance team in Workday or IT systems? Not every company, you're not running on just a Workday system. You have other downstream systems that Workday is the system of truth. They're the system of record for the employee data. So what other areas are using that information that comes from you? So making sure that you can do those checks and balances is a big piece.
Awesome. Perfect. That was well said. So with all of that, let's go on to, how to best leverage that power of one. I see there, the partner, and that's partnering internally, correct?
It's actually not just partnering internally. If you partner internally with your own team, compensation, let's talk about that. If you're only meeting with your team members, you're very siloed. Similar to what I was just saying before, you're not understanding the full inner workings. But at the other point, it's also partnering with external, not just other HR partners. Compensation, yes, they need to talk to payroll, they need to talk to recruiting. But understanding Workday is not just an HR data warehouse system. It's not just HR using the system. It's not just HR looking at the reports. It's employees, it's managers, it's the executives, it's that end user. So partnering with them they can be your biggest critics, but they can also be the most innovative to help you see the vision of where other managers are looking to take the company, where they want to take their teams, what might be coming for processes downstream, mergers and acquisitions. Hey, we might be growing, threefold in the next couple of years. All right, let's make sure that you're partnering early on in understanding what everybody else's needs are, because the system is meant for everyone to gain information from. And so with that, communications is extremely important, as Jet had touched base on. Partnering with all those others, it can be very daunting and being like, oh, it's too much noise. I'm bringing too many people into this zoo already. That's crazy. We have timelines we got to march to with this project. We don't want all this extra noise. That's not the case. Bring them in early on. Bring them in pre-implementation. Start having those conversations that this is what you're looking for. Get their buy-in that this system isn't just for us, it's for you too. So bring them into some of those demos. Get them in on, starting to ask, hey, as we're mapping out those processes, let's pull them in. What works for you as a manager during a termination? How do you want to see that final meet down with that employee before they leave to make sure that you're leaving on good terms, to make sure you're getting all the necessary equipment back? IT cares about that, different things like that. So bringing in all those different partners, yes, it can create noise, but it is actually very good constructive noise to make sure that you are equipping yourselves with the information to make the right choices when it's important. Make sure to circle back with the partners after decisions have been made and said, hey, I heard you. This is what I've done to help out. Or we weren't able to do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. But here's a solution, an alternative solution that compromises and makes it better for everybody in the long run. So thinking through those and just partnering is such a big thing in that communication piece. One of the big things I loved with communications are regular huddles or stand-up meetings. You don't realize how much information, even after post go live, having a daily HR meeting with each of the managers, 15 minutes, round robin, everybody tell me what's on your plate for this week. And you pick up so much information where it's like, oh, wait, that impacts me a little bit. Or can I learn a little bit more just to see if I can take advantage of what you're trying to do and fix something else maybe in my area? Playing off of each other. That's the partnership that really does make all of those connections and the power of one really sing and get you guys into where you need to be at in Workday.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's go ahead and move forward to where's the best place to start?
Jen, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, sure. So the best place to start is with the outputs. There are, everybody's got to get paid. That's why they're working. Everybody's got to get benefits that feed out to the vendors. There are certain outputs that you need to make sure happen. And so kind of the best way to start with those outputs and then work your way back. You don't want to test payroll at the last minute. You don't want to test your benefits integrations at the last minute. So keeping those in mind when you're starting, the design process and things like that will make your life so much easier. Make sure you're defining who owns the data, because those individuals will be extremely important in determining security and processes. And then make sure the people who input the data will, actually do it and they know what they're doing. If, none of your managers know what a cost center is, then you got to educate them or give that task to somebody else. So, you have to make sure that you're reconciling what is likely to happen and what is really going to happen, what needs to happen legally, things like that, to come forward with a solution that really, truly works. Kelsey, did you have anything to add?
No, you hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, starting at the end, figuring that out and going from there.
Okay, perfect. All right. So are y'all ready to dive into a couple case study details?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. So for these case study details, we're going to take a look at some Touchpoint specifics here for performance reviews, compensation reviews, communication, and payroll. So you guys take that away.
All right. So I know my slide is a little intense, but I've worked a lot in the performance and compensation sphere. And I do just want to have a note on here that the groups that I outline to involve and inform are just an example of what I see at most companies. Your business may be a little different, so keep that in mind as you're looking through this. But essentially, start with a timeline. And like we said earlier, start with the outputs and walk your way back. You can build out this timeline with the help of your partners in HR, but you need to know when the pay date's going to be. And that backs you out to when you need to have comp completed, to when you need to have comp launched, to when you need to have performance completed. So there is, underneath this, there are items in each category that feed through. So your performance ratings are going to impact the budget and the bonus pools and how much merit everyone gets, even the recommendations. All of that flows through and impacts payroll. If you don't have the right compensation plan connected to the right compensation element, connected to the right compensation earning, then you're in trouble because you're going to have gone through this entire process where you involved hundreds of managers and then whoops, nobody got paid. That doesn't look good. So you got to make sure that, everybody's on board and they're expecting it. They know that it's coming. They're looking out for it, and you tested it. That's the big thing. Test, test, test. But even under all of that, there's all this employee data that then has to be accurate. If your employees have the wrong data, then they may not even get a performance review. They may not even be included in the compensation process. So there's all this underlying data that you need to make correct. So it sounds like a lot of work, but guess what? It would be 100 times more work if you're using different systems for each thing. So that's kind of bringing it all together. When you combine all of these tasks together, you have fantastic reporting. You have a flow that doesn't involve 15 integrations. You have common compatible security between processes. So that's kind of my big spiel on the case study of performance and compensation and payroll.
Fantastic. Then I will go to this next one. I'm about to sneeze again. Excuse me. Oh.
Bless you.
I don't know how you guys are doing, but in Texas, allergies are insane at the moment. So I thank you for your patience as my head explodes.
No worries. So, for my case study that I want to talk about just real briefly is position management versus job management. Understanding that. I like to think of position management, it's a seat on the bus. People come on and off the bus. The seat, you can move throughout the seats, but the seat remains. Where for job management, you fill the seat at the same time as hiring it. You create that job. That job continues to move with that person throughout their life cycle of the company. And then when they leave the organization, the job goes with them. So most companies, the position management is the default. It works best for everybody. So with that being said, one of the biggest places that comes into play is budgeting. Guess every company does budgets. You set your budget, every manager, department, however level it is, and you determine at that time how many positions you're looking to open up for the next year. And you determine, I'm going to be opening up a position in Q3. Take that budget, take those all approved budget or approved positions at the close of the budget and load them into Workday. Upper management has already approved them. So why do they need to reapprove them? Get them into the system, get them loaded. So many people think that they have to follow the exact processes for every single situation. If you already loaded these and they're marked as budgeted, they've already been approved. Move on. You can have that position already created in the system, and recruiting can actually begin doing their job before Q3 even hits, knowing that they need to be able to hire somebody at the start of Q3. So you could actually do all of your interviewing in advance when so many people, if they wait, I'm supposed to hire in Q3, let's create this position, let it go through the approval process, follow up, figure out where it's at. And then all of a sudden you're halfway through Q3 and you're finally just starting to recruit. Well, you've now lost some of that head count that you were expecting to work on some of those jobs that you needed, the reason why you budgeted for it. So that's one big thing, is trying to empower your managers by getting those jobs in there right from the very beginning at the close of the budget. The other thing, is think of yourself also as a manager. Hey, your employee just turned in their 2 weeks notice. Oh no, what's going to happen? You want to get that recruitment started ASAP. Actually, you really want to start it yesterday. But with position management, if you actually build it out to trust the process and rely on those budgeted positions, then as soon as you put that termination in the work-in system, it's getting completed, that requisition can begin open up and recruiting can begin. And sometimes you could already find your replacement before the first person has even left. So you could even get some cross training in there, or you just know the person's leaving today, then you have the new person starting tomorrow. You can have that ready to go so you're all prepared and you don't lose out on those valuable resources. So then that way, when it comes down to the approvals, the only thing that has to go through the approval, if you choose, are the unbudgeted positions. That extra noise that sending every position through the approval process creates for management, some of them just start clicking approve, or they'll be arguing with you that, is this position really needed, when it's actually a backfill. So if you're relying on your employees and empowering your managers to continue to work on those budgeted positions, backfill them when needed and in the right timing, then you're going to speed up your process. Upper management doesn't have to continually be in the system just to click approve because they're holding up stuff and now they're jeopardizing the functionality of their managers and their teams. So that really does clean up so much noise from those managers' inboxes that they can then manage from a dashboard. Let them get that data. Let them see the ups and downs of turnover as needed. Another great thing with position management is you're tracking the position. You can see that position, where it sits, who's filling it, and how many times it's been filled, or how many times it's moved managers. So you can see, hey, am I having an issue with that specific position? Is the issue with a manager? Maybe it's that location. You can start to correlate some of that information and empower the managers then to actually manage what's going on in their organization to reduce that turnover. So there is a lot of great things with position management that people just aren't taking advantage of because they feel everything needs to have those approval processes fully built out. Everything needs to have that sign off in Workday. Well, if your budget's outside the system, that's fine. Load it in, get it in there, and you'll be in a much better position.
Awesome. Thanks. Perfect. Jet, anything else to add to that?
No.
Okay, fantastic. Well, then we will go into my favorite portion of this webinar, which is the Q&A. And we did have a couple questions come in here, and I'm going to try and find one that hasn't already been answered. Okay, so what happens if security isn't set up properly before going live, and all of a sudden someone or a group has access to data that they shouldn't have access to? How could that have been prevented, and then how do you go about fixing that?
So I'll go ahead and take this one. That's again where testing comes in handy. You know who your super users are going to be, but test as everyone. Honestly, if you can get the time to test as everyone, go in as a floor employee and check to see, can they see the comp of the CEO? If they, can't, then you're good. If they can, you might want to make a tweak, and just go through and test those key things. Pick like 3 things: compensation, date of birth, and social, and test to see who can see those and who can't, because those are, really key private information. That's the best way to prevent it. And also, of course, working with your implementation partner. They know about security. They know how to secure these items properly. So make sure you're including them and they're very clear on who can see these different aspects of an employee profile. But if it's already happened and it's already done, I would say the best way to stick a Band-Aid on that is cut that security group, unassign folks from it, fix the issue, then reassign them back to it. If you think it's going to basically take more than a couple minutes to fix, if you need to really go in and troubleshoot it, then I would just unassign the security. And then once you've done your full testing and really gotten that security group worked out, reassign it.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'll jump in because, with the testing, any changes, you're going to make changes throughout the system. That's one of the joys of Workday is it gives you reins of your own system. You don't have to always call that specific vendor to do everything. So between yourself and your partners that you might want to engage with, test it in sandbox. Changes to opening up certain business processes or changes to processes, go in and make sure, always triple check security. That's a big piece. I've been in organizations, that security is front of the game. You can't have that, terminations, making sure people's accesses get dropped immediately. If they're walking out the door today at 2:00, all right, I want to make sure I shut off their security access immediately, different things like that. So making sure you have built out also your processes from a testing perspective, going in, always go in as employees. Which type of employees should you go in and triple check? Managers, supervisors, always grab someone at each of the different management levels and people that might have different security access. I was in a system where finance was not in Workday, but we gave a couple of our finance partners access so they could pull some of their own reports when they're trying to balance out the payroll GLs. So make sure to test each of those different things, because you still need to, at the foremost, it's HR data. It's secured. You need to keep it secured. So triple check it. I've always been one to, with every Workday release, I retest it. I go in as some of those same people and confirm, can I see this? Can I see that? I click places I never, you don't think of. Let's just click on this button and see what happens. Go through each of the different menu options. Let's try to pull up this report. Just search for a random word like social, or search random person, the president of your company. Let's see what I can see on them. Different things like that. Just play around with that testing.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the next question, and this is going to be for both of you. So we'll start with Kelsey, because you both have had, first hands-on experience with this. So how does Cicero help its clients leverage the power of one?
I'll jump in first, because honestly, I've partnered with Cicero actually on the end client side previously. And so I really enjoyed, and what I was looking for was someone that was going to truly consult with me. Don't just be that yes man. I want to hear someone say, you know what? Yes, that process, your workflow might work, but it's going to be a maintenance nightmare, or we could do it better. We could do it more efficiently, or you might break this or that. I want to hear from somebody to help guide me to make the best choices. At the time, I was still learning Workday. I'm still learning Workday, so I wanted somebody to guide me. I didn't want someone to say, yes, I can build that, and they take weeks upon weeks to build something that was so convoluted that they should have told me from the get-go, yeah, that's not possible, or we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So now that I'm actually on the consultant side, a big thing for me is I love to talk through those processes and be that guidance for my clients and empower them with the right knowledge to make the best choices for their organization, where their company's planning to go to, calling out, hey, you might want to talk to your senior leadership to make sure they're on board before we move forward with this choice. Really getting them the right information and choices. It's not a yes or no. There's workarounds that can be built out to compromise and still meet the needs of everybody that's involved, different things like that. So just understanding those working knowledge, just from a client, helps them make the best choices so they don't feel pigeonholed.
Very cool.
Absolutely. And within Cicero, there's just a wealth of knowledge. And so, it's nice to always have one person say, well, you need to think about these downstream impacts. But when you have two people say it, or 5 or 10, it has a lot more weight to it when you can, speak with a group, brainstorm with a group, and work with a group that's as knowledgeable as the group with Cicero is.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. There's something about, somebody gives that advice to you, but you hear it from a completely different source or multiple sources. And for whatever reason, that just makes it click. Definitely been there. Okay. So another one here is, how would you deal with teams that are siloed and don't really understand how to use the power of one to their advantage?
I'll jump in real quick just because a former company that I've worked for, I've had that experience. I walked into it and everyone was very siloed. It was team members had been moving in and out of different roles because they were restructuring, whatever the case may be. But I took it as kind of on my job, part of that of being the sole support in Workday that, hey, let's have these conversations. I'm not going to just configure what you told me to do. I want to make sure that what we do is going to work best for everybody. So during one of the first kickoff meetings, guess what? I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and let's invite others to the meeting. I'll definitely coordinate with that person, compensation. Hey, who do you think? Because really we should partner with payroll. We need to partner with benefits. We need to partner with recruiting. Who should be the best people? And I've gotten pushback saying, they don't need to be involved. It's just my area. Well, no, they do because of X, Y, and Z. Giving them that guidance and explaining how those connections occur and how they impact others, then it's like, oh, now I get it. Okay, that makes sense. Because as Jet had mentioned with the turnover, you might be getting people in board in some of those positions, some of those key roles, compensation director, things like that they've never worked in Workday. So you're teaching them, because in prior systems, they probably had their own separate system to work in. Nobody had to worry about it. They manually entered their information and they were good. They stayed siloed. But with Workday, it is that knowledge transfer, teaching them, guiding them through that is a big thing.
During after the initial go live at a previous company, we actually, the HRIS team invited literally all of HR to a Workday meeting. It was bi-monthly, twice a month. And what we would do was we would go over Workday projects that we were working on, just so that they knew what was going on across the board. That was a good way to have some others say, oh, wait, what about this? What about that? Have you told this person? Have you told that person? Things like that. And then we'd also go over Workday wins and Workday worries. And it, allowed us to address things as basically one big happy team. It worked really well. Attendance was actually super small to start out, but there was so much word of mouth that other departments in HR started sending like representatives to listen and things like that. So I think that it was just a nice little half-hour meeting, and it was so informative for not just us, but for all of HR to know what was going on, what was being planned, and just what we could do to, like I keep saying, make life better for everybody.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. I don't have any other questions that have come in. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? Any last minute tips and tricks?
My last thing to say, don't be afraid to be a hero. Find, I don't know, the crankiest person in your organization and find some way to help them with the data in Workday. Show them how it connects, show them how their effort and input into the system makes, I don't know, a report, a dashboard, something that they need, and save their day. They'll become a lot less cranky and one of your biggest advocates. So don't be afraid to be a hero.
I like that a lot. One of things I would say would be kind of similar to that, but knowledge transfer. Teach people to fish. Workday is meant for that end user. It's not meant for HR to manually enter everything themselves. So teach them to fish. Get them in there. Get them comfortable with it. Create user guides, videos. You don't have to inundate them with tons of information, but take that time. If they have a question on something, don't just do it for them. Take that time. Hey, let's jump on a call. Let me share screens. And how about you drive? Let me walk you through it. And while you're doing the clicking, they're going to learn better. And that's for people within the HR team working in Workday on a daily basis, all the way up to your CEOs and presidents. Work with them. Don't hesitate, because a lot of times that knowledge really is golden. They do enjoy being able to play around in it then themselves and see what else they can do to better support their organization, their managers, their goals, things like that. So don't take it all on. Teach people how to fish.
I love that.
Beautiful.
If you didn't take anything away from this meeting, take away two things. Teach people to fish and don't be afraid to be a hero. Those are awesome. You guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Jet. Y'all's knowledge is gold. I appreciate it so much. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
For having me.
Awesome. Well, I just want to remind everyone to connect with Cicero on social media, connect with Jet, connect with Kelsey. I know they're always willing to answer my questions when I have them. I'm sure they're willing to answer yours as well. A recording of this will be available on YouTube. If you had to duck out early, we'll make sure to post that up there. But if you have any questions about Cicero, shoot us an email at info@cicero.com. Thank you guys again so much for joining us, and we look forward to advancing the solution and empowering your people in any way that we can. Thank you guys, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.